All right, City Clerk, can we have a roll call?
Yes. Alderman Rainey.
Here.
Alderman Fleming.
Here.
Alderman Fisk.
Here.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Here.
Alderman Nguyen. Here. Alderman Wilson.
Here.
Alderman Rue Simmons.
Here.
Alderman Suffredin.
Here.
We have a quorum.
How about Alderman Rubella?
I'm sorry, Alderman Rubella.
Here.
Yes.
All right, well, welcome to the first meeting of the 80th City Council. First thing on the agenda is the mayor's public announcements. Don't have any announcements other than a big shout out to two organizations that a week ago today I resigned from, Youth and Opportunity United and First Bank and Trust, two great organizations here in town that I'm no longer a part of. So. City Manager, do you have any public announcements?
No, sir.
City Clerk, do you have any announcements?
Yeah, I have one announcement. The city clerk's office is now open until 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. That's it.
All right, terrific. Public comment. We have one person that has signed up for public comment. Just a reminder, everyone, public comment is set at 3 minutes. And Wendy Pollak, if you want to come up to the microphone.
Thank you. I'm Wendy Pollak, co-chair of the Environment Board. I'm also working with the city's North Shore Channel Habitat Project. And I believe you all received a letter that the Environment Board wrote last Thursday evening that urges you to adopt the resolution before you tonight, Resolution 50R17, and to oppose granting of a roadway easement through Isabella Woods. If you did not receive it, it was emailed. I can get you copies. Isabella Woods is one of a number of parcels of channelside land the city leases from the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. Earlier generations of public officials here had the foresight to secure these leases and preserve these lands as parks and open green space. They include the Ladd Arboretum and a series of parks on the east side of the channel, Twigs, and on down to the south. They also include Canal Shores Golf Course, and until this question of a road came up again, most of us probably assumed that this little parcel that we've come to call Isabella Woods was just part of the golf course. And it's a tiny parcel of very old oak woods. And I have a few pictures that Leslie Shatt has brought. And this group, by the way, I think mostly is here supporting me. You might want to take a look.
Thank you, Wendy.
So the lands that Evanston leases from MWRD fill a lot of community needs, from clean air to recreation. They provide crucial habitat for birds, and that's one of the reasons Evanston recently received a $100,000 grant for work in the Arboretum and other channelside parks to improve the bird habitat. Some of us were there this afternoon, and in 5 minutes we saw a Baltimore oriole and palm warblers, and it's very busy with birds right now. But these lands also serve a crucial role as green infrastructure. Basically, they're sponges that divert huge amounts of stormwater from our strained sewer system. This is especially true of Isabella Woods. As you can see, if you've been there lately or from those pictures, there's a lot of water there. It's partially wetland. So I want to focus on this because stormwater management has been a key mission of MWRD since 2004. In fact, the following year, they adopted a policy that requires that any land they lease along the North Shore north of Devon, which includes all of this land, be, quote, dedicated exclusively to open green space and recreational use. More important, MWRD is under a 2011 consent decree from EPA that requires it to implement a green infrastructure program. Well, I will summarize then, or perhaps someone else can carry on with this, that we did some estimates of the amount of storm water that's being held by the trees in Isabella Woods based on city inventories. It's over 115,000 gallons of storm water a year. That's the equivalent of more than 2,000 rain barrels. And there's no way that planting a grove of young trees would begin to make up for the loss of oaks that have been growing there for hundreds of years. Some of them are probably close to 300 years old. And I can share with you the tree calculations that are used to make those estimates, and perhaps others do want to follow up since
All right, I'll give them the
I have
opportunity.
to stop now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pollak, and thank you for the work that you do with the Environmental Board here. Is there anyone else that would like to come up for public comment?
I think we just also wanted to just stand up and acknowledge that we're all here to support that.
Okay, maybe Carl's gonna maybe ask you all to do that, okay? Your name, please.
Carl Bava, and I live at 1322 Rosalie Street, and that's about 3 blocks away from this subject parcel. The recourse that this landowner has for this landlocked situation is basically going back to the subdivision from which the landlocked situation actually occurred. As a result of the subdivision being divided the way it was, it created the landlocked situation. State law dictates that his recourse is with that subdivision. Since that subdivision is in the village of Wilmette, his recourse lies wholly within the city of Wilmette, village of Wilmette. As a stormwater engineer myself, I basically have to agree 100% with Ms. Pollak's assessment of the stormwater. In addition, should this stormwater be this positive aspect of the woods be taken away, then it is very possible that the city of Evanston would have to upgrade its own storm sewer system to account for the lost storage and to preserve a roadway. And in so doing, it is very likely that we would disturb not only the roadway itself that would be built within this easement, but the entire parcel that's wet. So it's a far greater impact than people might imagine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bova. Okay, is there anyone else that wants to speak at public comment? Okay, Ms. Damchak.
Hello, I'm Linda Mashek, representing Evanston Parks and Lakefront Alliance, and we strongly oppose the requested easement over public land called Isabella Woods for private use and commercial gain. The developer has requested an easement to build on land that's continually wet or flooded. Such land most likely needs wetland analysis and must be maintained in its natural state to assist with stormwater management. The proposed easement would result in the loss of old-growth oak trees, which are approximately 169 years old. Possible flooding may result from current water drainage issues that would be exacerbated by a hard surface. In addition, there would be a loss of the natural serenity that the woods provide. All these losses to the community would be made simply to enable an owner with no legal justification to request eminent domain for no public gain, but rather only personal commercial profit. Please support the Evanston City Council Resolution 50R17 to stop this unnecessary and detrimental land grab.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no more public comment, we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, special order of business. We have 2 special orders of business this evening. SP number 1 is Resolution 50R17, registering the city's objection to Cook County's roadway easement request through property owned by the MWRD and leased by the city of Evanston. Staff recommends City Council adopt Resolution 50R17 to register the city's objection to the roadway easement requested by Cook County through property owned by the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District and leased by the city of Evanston.
Move approval.
Second.
Alderman Rubella.
I'd just like to say a few words. I think you've heard from our testimony this evening about the wonderful ecological and stormwater benefits that this valuable property provides for the greater community. I don't know how many of you have had a chance lately to go visit that area, put your wellies on and walk around. It's really, really a beautiful area, and you will see how very wet it is and how valuable it is as a stormwater retention area. I just like to just kind of review for people's, the history behind the attempts by the Keefe family to secure an easement to that property. It began back in 1988. Mr. Keefe Sr. Began acquiring property that was already landlocked south of Gulf Terrace and north of the Evanston city line. In 1980, the next year, 1989, he was negotiating with the CTA and had an agreement with the CTA to acquire an easement from Maple Avenue along the CTA tracks to provide the access then to this property. So then in 1990, he submitted a subdivision proposal to Wilmette to build 4 houses, and Wilmette denied that permit. Because they said the road area, the access road was too narrow. It was wide enough for general access, but not wide enough to meet the requirements for emergency vehicles. And instead, he would need to provide some kind of turnaround area within his property for the vehicles. So Mr. Keefe filed a lawsuit, and it went on for almost 8 years. The village of Wilmette did prevail, but it cost almost $200,000 for the village. And then 4 years later, in 2002, Mr. Keefe went ahead and he acquired a second parcel to fill out where he really wanted to build these 4 houses. So despite knowing all along that it was landlocked, he continued with his vision for the subdivision. Then things were pretty quiet for a while, but then 2016, last year, MWRD approached Evanston to consent to an easement for Mr. Keefe to build his access road. And Mr. Keefe proposed creating a nature park to benefit the Evanston community. This was going to be between the road and the golf course and would have a boardwalk. And I held a community meeting in October of 2016 for the residents to hear about this proposal. And except for one gentleman at the meeting, everybody was really strongly opposed to the idea of even this nature park and wanted to see the whole area remain as undisturbed as possible. So now here we are a year later, 2017, and a new easement request has been submitted, which none of this changes the fact that Isabella Woods is really still a rare ecological preserve and an important stormwater management area that really deserves to be protected. So the letter from Mr. Yonan from the Cook County Department of Transportation and Highways says that the road access road is necessary because the property is landlocked and doesn't have any access. But in fact, as I explained earlier, the Keefe family does have an opportunity to have access to the property from Wilmette along the CTA tracks for the development of 1 or 2 homes. So anyway, I encourage all my colleagues to visit this wonderful property and to support the resolution.
Thank you, Alderman Rubella. Alderman Nguyen?
Yes, I wanted to ask Alderman Rubella a question. I'm fully supportive of this. What do you have a sense of what our objection will prevail, or what is the sense at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District with respect to this?
Right. Well, unfortunately, the MWRD recently lost a huge lawsuit over an easement issue adjacent to its property downtown on Erie. There had been an easement in place between allowing access to the property on Michigan Avenue where the Terra Museum of Art had been, and the easement was used regularly for all those years that the museum was there, and then the property was sold to the Ritz-Carlton company for condominium development, I believe, and at that point MWRD said, well, they didn't want to see that kind of use of the easement, so they blocked the access for 3 years, which caused big delay then for the Ritz-Carlton to be able to build its property. And ultimately, the lawsuit went against MWRD, and they did have to pay, I want to say like $40 million, some really big amount. So anyway, so I would say MWRD is not anxious for another lawsuit. And therefore, I don't know how they're going to, whether that will prevail over their need to meet their requirement for stormwater management.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, we had a motion earlier to approve Resolution 50-R-17 that was seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this resolution passes 9-0 by the City Council. We have a second order of business, SP2 Collective Bargaining Summary. The City of Evanston has 4 collective bargaining units: Fraternal Order of Police Officers, Fraternal Order of Police Sergeants, International Association of Firefighters, Local 742, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Presently, the city is in negotiations with FOP officers, IAFF, and AFSCME. City negotiation teams meet with the respective union leadership team to discuss changes to the contract regarding all allowable bargaining issues. Staff is going to provide a verbal update on each of the 3 contract negotiations in executive session this evening.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Marty Lyons, the Assistant City Manager, Chief Financial Officer, is here, and I'm going to ask him just to come up and give a brief overview. As I think you know, the contracts all expired at the end of December. We have been making good progress with the bargaining units, and we will give you more specific details in executive session shortly. But we wanted to at least give you a brief overview of some contextual issues, which Mr. Lyons is here, but let me offer up just one, and that is the state of Illinois does not have a budget. The state of Illinois didn't have a budget last year. It didn't have a budget this year, and it's on its way to not having a budget next year. And while the city of Evanston is doing, I think, under those circumstances, is exceptionally well with our own budgeting, the peril that we face in negotiating any long-term agreement for salary and wages, or anything else for that matter, is jeopardized by the unknown of what the state of Illinois may do with its budget process. At this point, there is lots of discussions. Certainly Alderman Suffredin is there on a regular basis and may have additional comments, but clearly it doesn't look good. But at the same time, we need to have agreements with our bargaining units. We need to move forward. The issues in Springfield are not the fault of our employees. Our employees come to work every day and do an exceptional job for the residents of Evanston. So while we're feeling good and confident moving forward, unfortunately, I need to start the discussion off with a big bucket of water, and that is that our fiscal future, our fiscal health, is very precarious because of this truly unprecedented inaction in Springfield. So, Mr. Lyons, I realize that's about as awful an introduction as one could possibly give.
That is not how they taught you to do that in Rotary.
That's how that's. But Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I wanted to start with that short preamble. Mr. Lyons, if you could fill in the rest.
Mayor Haggerty, members of council, Clerk Reed, the summary that you've already heard is really a nice snapshot. I will tell you that we have had very good labor contracts and labor peace for the past decade. And a lot of times you might think that, oh, well, that means we're not bargaining hard enough. And I will tell you, if you do an external comparable in a lot of the areas that matter, on an economics basis, we've done very well when we compare our benefits, the cost of our benefits, and our wages. So from that perspective, we have not just always agreed with the bargaining units. We have not settled a contract before the close of the contract in the past 6 years, even though we started ahead of time. So there were long and very detailed discussions on negotiations. The purpose of me having this short preamble is in exec session we can talk about the specifics. We can't talk about the process. So in exec session we'll talk about exactly where we're at with each contract being negotiated. And our discussions have been very fruitful so far, and we have some key issues to go through. But under Illinois law, especially for police and fire, we need to bargain in good faith, and to the extent that we cannot reach agreement, then we could move towards arbitration and have an independent arbitrator decide one side or the other on specific issues. We have not had that happen in many, many years. We have it happen on single issues, but not on the whole contract, and not recently as a part of the bargaining process. Our neighbor to the west was 3 years overdue on their fire contract, just waiting to settle a contract, and that doesn't help morale necessarily, let alone have a good picture of our total financial costs. Any of our costs that we incur right now, even though we haven't settled, those all still need to be accounted for in each given year. So having a contract that lasts, a negotiation that lasts 2 years, makes it more difficult to show our true cost of providing services. So we have always tried to settle in good faith, and we've been able to do that for the last 2 contracts, and yet remain competitive with all of our costs of benefits. So I'll be happy to take any questions. Otherwise, we would talk about the details of our negotiations in exec session.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lyons. All right, call of the wards. Let's start with Alderman Rainey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just only notice I have is a Clyde Brummel Park meeting tomorrow night at 7 o'clock to discuss uses of the park with Lawrence Hemingway and myself. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Alderman Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to announce.
Alderman Fleming, I'm sorry. It's Wednesday night. Sorry. No, let's see. It's tomorrow night. It is tomorrow night. Tonight's
All right, let's get this on the record. Go for the whole thing again.
It's 7 o'clock at Clyde Brummel Park tomorrow night. That's when the meeting is.
Perfect. Alderman Fleming.
Okay, that's okay. And I am actually having a ward meeting. The first one will be on May the 25th at 7 p.m. at Chute. And we are also going to have a meeting on a Saturday morning as some residents can't make it in the evening. So that'll be on the 27th of May, 9 a.m. at Pope John Paul. So postcards will be going out to every resident as well as updates online.
Terrific. Thank you. Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First ward meeting coming up on Tuesday, June 6th. Same place as always, the Downtown Public Library, 7 to 9 p.m.
Thank you. Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first want to thank all the residents who came out for the second ward meeting. We had a lot of attendance as we were talking about the Main Street project. And the other date that I'm inviting members to council to attend is May 27th. We have the ribbon cutting for Penny Park at noon. So we're getting very close to completing the project, and I'm inviting you all to put that date on your calendar with more details to come. Thank you.
Terrific. That'll be an exciting day. Alderman Nguyen.
Yes, I'd just like to let people know that the first Thursday of June, I will be having my office hours again at Brothers K from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., and everyone come on out for the Yay Festival in Raymond Park.
Great. Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
No report.
Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This week, the 18th, we have our last ward meeting, which will actually be a potluck sponsored by West at Fleetwood Jourdain. We will be moving forward with ward meetings on every third Thursday, 7 p.m. New location is Gibbs Morrison. Come out, see Alderman Holmes, and make sure that you tell her how greatly she is appreciated. And this weekend is actually Dillo Day, and I just want to reassure everyone that there's a very thoughtful, safe, and fun plan in place for that. So,
What band is going to be there?
you can check out dilloday.com for that.
I like that.
Thank
It'll
you.
be safe. Thank you, Alderman Ruth Simmons. Alderman Sufferton.
I would just like to recognize Willard teacher Jean Luft on her impending retirement.
Terrific. Alderman Rubella. All right. Go ahead, Ann. Alderman Rainey.
I made a terrible mistake.
This never happens.
I'm never first. the error is that Tuesday night, tomorrow night, I'm one of the hosts for On the Table, sponsored by Chicago Community Trust. And that's very important. That's going to be at my home, and that's just constantly on my mind. Wednesday night at Clyde Brummel Park at 7 o'clock, and there will be chairs there, so people who have issues standing up in the cold will be able to sit down. It's going to be a really nice night. We're going to have lots of people. We've had lots of flyers out, and we're going to be discussing with Lawrence Hemingway the idea of soccer and other more active activities at Clyde Brummel Park. So everybody come out. There are lots of differing opinions, but it's going to be Wednesday night. That's my final word.
Very good. Alderman Wilson, do you want to lead us into executive session?
I move pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes, ILCS 120/2A, that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding collective bargaining and litigation. These agenda items are permitted subjects to be considered in executive session and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act. The exceptions are 5 ILCS 120/2A, C2, and C11.
Do we have a motion to adjourn? Yeah, I was going to ask for a second. All right, do I have a second? All in favor? Anyone opposed to adjourning and going to executive session? All right, we're adjourned.